first things first of the whole presentation that went on in Uberzati back in February, all the presentations, and which one really caught your eye? Which one out of everybody was stuff that you were just learning that you didn't know before?
Well, like after 44 years and all that kind of stuff, I like to, say all the time that I've learned more in the last 10 than I did in my first 56 years of life. And I think that's a powerful thing. And then the other thing I really like to talk about is evolution, that too many people have it all figured out when they're in their 20s, the anchor bias crap, the first thing you learn is the thing that becomes you, and that becomes your identity. And then you spend the rest of your life defending yourself and defending your beliefs instead of being open to stuff. And I think the Uberzati clinic in general was, I mean, it was called the out of the box. I mean, when David Weck is somewhere, it's not going to be normal. I mean, it's going to
Mhm.
be out there. And so what I learned really, I really have a hard time saying I learned more from one person than another. Brian Cool, I've been around a lot. Brian and I have, I called him maybe 7 years ago when I saw an article that was written about the training of Christian McCaffrey, and people, maybe a dozen people had sent me that article saying, "Oh my God, this guy's feeding the cats. That's how he's training McCaffrey. He's feeding the cats." And so I called him. I said, "This Tony Holler, feed the cats," and he was like, "I don't know anything about you, and I've never heard of feed the cats," which was brilliant because right away I'm like, "Holy cow!" Brian Kula and myself have evolved into like the same person without knowing each other. So it was like this beautiful synergy between the two of us. And so even though I've heard him speak maybe a dozen times, I think repetition is important with learning. And I don't know if you've ever reread a book, but I've never reread a book where I did not feel like the book was better the second time,
Mm.
where you catch stuff. The repetition is important, but also you don't catch everything that you read. And so Brian Kula's presentation was huge to me. David Weck blows my mind. He has so much. I do think that sometimes he has so it's like a fire hose of crazy stuff, and it's really hard to grab hold of something. So the Weck stuff is fascinating. Matter of fact, I'm going to spend 2 days, 48 hours with David Weck in San Diego. I'm taking my son Troy, who's my content manager, and we're going to get videos. I'm hoping Les Spellman's in the area, and I work with the Universal Speed Rating. Matter of fact, I'm doing 8 presentations over an 8 week period. $99 if you sign up before the 13th. After that, it's 149. But anyway, I work. So I would like to have some back and forth with him. And then I never heard or seen Brian McGinty before. And Brian, I love when there is an elite athlete to demo stuff. I know I do that a lot, and the better the athlete, the better they demo, the more powerful the visuals are. But what I saw there was CNS training on steroids. I mean, we are practicing things that you cannot do for more than a few seconds because they are so intense, followed by long, solid recoveries, and then, man, jumping right back into that CNS fire again. And the things that I say about my X Factor work, which is exercises, which is basically everything Brian McGinty was doing, were exercises that he felt would improve the speed of that already elite athlete. And so I love the idea that we can see exercises and say, there you go. I like that. I like that makes sense. Now, there's no scientific sense. It is more like a gut feeling, like a hunch. Like, yes, great athletes might be able to do that and improve by doing it. And a slow person could not have ever done what that young lady was doing for us. Having said
Mhm.
that, I love the landmine stuff, the rotational things. Oh my goodness,
Absolutely.
it makes so much. so much sense to me to be 3D or 4D in the weight room instead of being linear, instead of like working on the biceps, up and down, to get twisting, rotational, full body stuff. And so, yeah, it was really, it's amazing that that was a free clinic as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, right? Because that's worth a lot. And the cool thing about the landmine too is you can mimic, if you wanted to, sprint mechanics. For anyone who doesn't know, can you explain just quickly at the beginning of the podcast, Feed the Cats, the concept of Feed the Cats and what that means to the audience?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm very good at explaining exactly what it means. When people see my business is called Feed the Cats, they're like, "What the hell is that?" And like I was coming back from Houston. I did an all day thing at Second Baptist High School in Houston last Friday, and a lady on the plane saw my shirt that said "Feed the Cats," the shirt I'm wearing right now, and she goes, "Oh, you should see my cats. They are a pain in the ass." She thought like I was some cat expert or something. But no, no, but the whole deal is that I believed as a track coach that every school had a good track team. They just could not get them to come out for their sport. And so if you think about the athletes that would make my track team good, it's like the dunkers on the basketball team. It's like the all conference football players, the fast wide receivers, the great defensive backs and things like that. Off the baseball team, I'd have to steal them because it's the same season, but steal them I did sometimes. Um, they were the guys that could play center field and steal bases. As a matter of fact, I had a guy that played center field and stole bases that high jumped 7-2 for me. So he went over 7 foot 14 different times his senior year. And he also played 28 games for the baseball team, which is a cool story.
Wow.
He got drafted by the Atlanta Braves, but he went to Iowa State to be a high jumper. And and so the idea was that I need those cats to be a good coach. I cannot have mules on my team and be a good track coach. I have to have the cats, those twitchy, jumpy, fast, and I'm going to start feeding those guys. And by feeding those guys, I will attract them. Like if you put some cat food on your front porch, you'll probably have the neighborhood stray cats come and eat. Well, that's kind of what I did as a track coach, feed the cats. Now, once I started doing that and started focusing not on running the cat out of them or not killing the cats, but instead have a program of sprint and jump, short efforts turned up to an 11. What I found was that somehow they still got into great physical condition without doing laps. We haven't run a lap in 26 years, not a single lap in 26 years. But my guys are still great in the 4x4 because they're in terrific shape by doing high level stuff and stacking those things one upon the other. So what I learned was that not only was this highly beneficial for cats and attracted cats to my program, it also improved the mules. It improved
Mm.
the generic guys, the guys that you would never call a cat. All of a sudden, they were jumping higher, sprinting faster. And it blew my mind that, yeah, the cats improved, but it was those generic kids that improved the most by being trained like a cat. So that's a long-winded explanation of Feed the Cats.
Yeah, I think
Let's
that's
let's go
fantastic.
into it a little bit. Let's go into it a little bit because I'd say the standard procedure in most programs is run the cat out of them. Time and time again, you hear swimmers, you hear track runners, you hear football players, baseball players running laps, laps, laps. So where did this come from, and I, I, where did you get the idea that feed the cats, give them speed, give them what they want, rather than running it out of them? Where did you come up with that, and where did you find it was better?
Three things happened in 1999, or actually 98, caused kind of a flip switch in 99. And first of all, I need to say that creative, um, important ideas are not top down; they're bottom up. I just talked to Hal Mummy, air raid offense, and he would have never created the air raid offense if he would have been head coach at Alabama, because you almost have to be conservative. If you get creative and lose a single game, you're going to get fired because of that creativity.
Yeah.
So he was able to coach at this who gives a crap school called Iowa Wesleyan, and he started throwing the ball 75 times a game. One time he ran mesh, his famous pass play, 52 times in one game. His quarterback completed 77% of his passes for the year. I mean, it's like that creativity does not come uh, from people who are scared to be creative. And if you're making $1 million a year and you have the best athletes in America, you are probably conservative as hell. You're doing it the way it's always been done. So I was this track coach at a school of 700 kids, and like it's an orphan sport, where parents don't even come to do the track meets. It's a stepchild of the athletic world. So I was able to be creative. My son said, Dad, my son was a really good cat. He could dunk a basketball in eighth grade. He was fast. He was long, lanky, 6'3". And he said, Dad, I think I'm going to play baseball in high school because track sucks. And stuff like that should change a dad
Yeah.
who is the track coach. It didn't matter that I'd won a state championship already, doing it the old way. But I said, yeah, it does suck, but there's a lot. And I said, what am I doing coaching a sport that kids hate? And I said, well, what if we just sprinted and jumped and we got really good at that and we didn't run any more laps? Would you run? He goes, yeah, right. You'll never do that. I go, watch me. Watch me. I'm going to start. I'm going to start training people like cats. Cats don't jog. You put a leash on a cat and say, let's go for a 3 miler. That cat will lay on its back. He would rather lose his fur being drugged for 3 miles than to do that kind of BS.
Yeah.
And that's the way great athletes are sometimes as well. At least the pure cats are. So that was really huge. And then I, I I saw a guy speak that just blew me away. I didn't know him. He's a D3 coach in Massachusetts, a track coach. Paul Souza was his name. I didn't know he was a 7'4" high jumper at Penn State. All I knew was he coached at a nothing high school but had success. And he said, um, we had four guys that were under 47 in the 400 last year, and we never ran a lap in practice, and we never ran further than 200 meters. And we worked on speed, bounce, jumping, strength. And I started like to lean forward, and I'm like, where was that guy when I was running track? That sounds fantastic. And so what he did was give me the courage to do something I already felt like might work. So that's how it all got started. And then when you start timing stuff, you start learning stuff, and it's just built on itself. And 26 years later, I'm traveling not only the United States but internationally, talking about feeding the cats.
So cool. Yeah, and it's interesting for you to be a pioneer in that because I played a lot of sports growing up. I never ran track, and so I wanted to ask you, how common really is it in track for the conditioning to be the standard practice? Like, well, if we can run more than the race, then we should be just good to go in the race. How common really is that?
I think it's 100%. Well, no, no, there are. It feels like the whole world's feeding the cats now because that's who reaches out to me. Like the Neanderthals don't call me up or nothing. And say no, we still run laps. Uh, but uh, but I would say we'll always be the minority because we've been sold this bill of goods that the more we do, the better we get, and that winners outwork losers, and the winning team won because they outworked you. If you lose, you double down. Practice is going to be 2 hours longer next week. Just and that causes losing streaks. But I think in all sports, it was more the better. Clyde Hart was probably recognized as the greatest college track coach in the history of the world because he coached great guys, like Michael Johnson, ran at Baylor. And Clyde would literally, his recipe was run 15 200s. It's for sprinters now, 15 200s on day one. And so high school coaches
Jesus.
would take their 14-year-olds and run them 15 200s on day one. And the ones that got broken were ridiculed for being soft and being out of shape. And we're going to have to toughen you up. And then they would quit the track team and the track coach became mean and angry and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not just track either. I just put out some on Twitter yesterday where a guy that played 8 years of professional ball in Europe. We're talking after I'd spoken, and he said, we had a hugely aerobic preseason where we ran miles and cross country like runs, and I thought I was in the best shape of my life. And the first time I played in the game, I was like 4 months, not 4 months, 4 minutes into the game, and I was grabbing my shorts, gassed. I was in terrible basketball shape. Uh, and football teams to this day want to build the aerobic base all summer. And then somehow magically that made them tough. Eh, Well, what it did is made them slow and
Yeah.
made the kids hate summer practice. And the love of practice, I think, is one of the keys to feed the cats, is that we are just never as good as we should be at things we don't like. And
Mhm.
the model of sports in America was I hate practice, but I love the games. And I've changed that.
Yeah, I
You
heard you say
know,
something that really made sense, and that's um, leave practice with gas in the tank.
It 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 really changes you because you go home. I don't know if you've ever had an oppressive, awful, terrible job, where you work like 10 hours and then you go home and you can't enjoy your 6 hours in the evening because you have to do it again the next day.
Yeah, yeah.
It's that spiral of doom type of
Yeah,
job.
yeah, spiral of doom. That's
Yes.
great.
Well,
That's so
that
true.
that's sports in America as well. And supposedly that made us tough. And
Yeah.
we bought into it, because we wanted the coach to like us, and we wanted to be tough and we wanted to man up and we wanted to fight through it and like overcome the pain and be soldiers and all that kind of stuff. I think it's kind of in the male DNA that's
Yeah.
we kind of want that. And for a lot of kids, you have to convince them otherwise that no, we're really here to win and perform. We're not here to see how hard we can work when we're tired. So all that stuff is
100%.
kind of like upside down. But a coach at Houston, the football coach said that my stuff was not revolutionary. It's advanced common sense, which I wrote that down because advanced common sense. Of course. Why are you like planting beans to grow corn? Why are you running miles to get fast in a race? And so yeah.
You have
You know
some
what I
good
think about a lot? I think about this a lot because as a swimmer growing up, there was there was times where I was doing really good at practice, but then I would swim bad at meets. But then when I would be dying in practice, just absolutely not being able to do the 10 200s is when my body was firing the most and when I had that quick twitch fiber. So it goes to show that being better at being fast is better than being good at a 200 or being good at a 400. If you're good at being fast, you don't need to be good at the 200 because you're training the brain to go slow rather than go fast.
Correct. There's so many like metaphors or analogies. Like look at pitching in baseball. Well, first of all, guys don't pitch 300 innings anymore. Guys don't pitch, like every third day anymore. Everybody's on a pitch count. And I know that sucks because we'd like to see our favorite pitchers pitch more. But if your job is to throw fast and not get injured, maybe you shouldn't throw, like 200 pitches a day. I think throwing 200 pitches a day at 80 miles an hour does absolutely nothing but detrain your ability to throw 100 miles an hour. I mean,
100%.
nobody can argue with that, right? I mean, we don't throw slow to throw fast. Instead, we throw fast with huge recoveries, prioritizing health, prioritizing being not injured, and that's really performance-based training. And and now coaches will argue, well, in the off season, that guy really should be throwing 200 times. No, I don't even think they do that anymore in baseball. I think pitchers, um, I think the feed the cats concept with pitchers was much more advanced 10, 15 years ago than any other thing. But even then, what did pitchers do running wise? They ran poles,
Holes, yep.
which is just nah, sprint them. They don't need endurance. They need to stack high level stuff and then recover totally.
I played baseball all throughout school, and I can't remember a single time where we sat and ran for speed, for developing our speed qualities. Ever. I can't think of
Ever.
one time where we ever did that. And same thing, I played basketball as well. And I mean, I remember running multiple suicides before ever taking a shot or working on any type of skill. We would get tired and then practice. As soon as you hit the
Oh,
baseball field, all right, let's get some poles in real quick, warm up, get the blood going.
yeah, they would pre-fatigue you
Yeah.
for practice. And of course, my dad taught me, he was really advanced as a basketball coach. You never train skills in a state of fatigue. So
No.
why are you getting tired before practice? And you say that you were never speed trained in basketball and baseball. How about this? I was a sprinter, a college sprinter, and I was never speed trained. All we did is 200s, 400s, 6 mile runs on Monday. We were tough, but we
Yeah.
were detrained sprinters at the college level.
Was there ever a piece of coaching, advice or some tips that you heard that sounded strange at first, and then you tried it and it became something that you kept forever?
I think that it's strange that probably what I was talking about with Paul Souza, um, it sounded strange, but to me it kind of sounded like advanced common sense. It is like, why doesn't everybody think like this? How come I am 40 years old, a coach's kid, a guy that reads books, a guy that asks questions? How come I still coach in a stupid way when this makes all the sense in the world? And then 9 years later, I went to a presentation by Chris Corfist. I All I knew was that he coached at a distance school. They'd won like 20 state championships in cross country, and they're always slow as hell in track in terms of their sprinters. It was a white school, they didn't have the look of the African American sprinter and all that kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, he started setting records, and all of a sudden, York High School was kind of like the new kid on the block. Like, what are they doing to create this speed? And so I went and he was like less volume than Paul Souza was. He turned me on to if you're fast in the 10-yard fly, it is the KPI of all sprinting that speeds the tide that lifts all boats. And I'm like, wow, like, oh, how do you time those 10-yard flies? Oh, I got a system, these Brower, I'd never heard of any of this stuff. These Brower photo gates. This is in 2008. And then I have this downhill skiing guy named Ernie Pyle from Utah. It has this thing that can measure speed to the thousandth of a second. And so we get our speed totally up, and then we run through those gates. How many times you do it? He said three. And I said, and this kind of helps guys run the 100 faster. He goes, yeah, and the 200 and the 400. I'm like, whoa, so that was probably the most radical stuff. And Chris continues to put out really radical um, types of things that kind of blow your mind, and then you realize a couple years later he was right.
So a quick question I have, because this is something that I've been thinking a lot about. When you're coaching your athletes, are you having them figure out the movement more, or are you trying to coach them through the movement?
Both. I think it's a great question, though. If you came to my practice, you would see guys doing things that would wow you, kind of like what we're talking about with McGinty and his and the girl that was doing the demos for him. It's like, oh man, I bet she's fast, and she was. So you would see those type of athletes. You would also see guys that are not doing it as well. And some of them suck.
Mhm.
And so I say that like freshmen will never do them as well as seniors. Um, if we did, we wouldn't have to practice stuff. But
Mhm.
some of my freshmen have a hard time skipping. They look very uncoordinated doing all kinds of things. But what I say is we assemble the plane in flight. We don't stop and like talk for 5 minutes to help this freshman along. I'm a huge believer in demonstration. Um, we are imitators. And the greatest thing that any teacher, coach, parent can do if they want their kid to do something better is not by talking 5 minutes or giving them a book to read. It's by showing. Have somebody
Mhm.
show it done well. I heard one time that if you have a high school baseball player and you take them to a major league baseball game and let them watch a guy hit in the cage, in the batting cage, that kid's batting average is going to go up 20 points by just
Mm.
watching a professional hit, because we are professional imitators, and we will absorb that stuff. Same thing in tennis, same thing with, yeah, running drills, whatever. So yes, I coach during our speed drills, but we're assembling the plane in flight. We're playing the long game. But also, what I think is really powerful, when I visited Michael Boyle, a famous S&C guy, one of the most famous guys, he brought me
Mhm.
out to Boston a long time ago, and he said I changed his life. He said that he'd been waiting in the train station for his ship to come in. That's a great saying. Basically, he had been hanging out with weight room guys and here in the echo chamber. And here he brought me in, who was a sprint guy who challenged the truth. And what he started doing after hearing me talk, so many people are afraid to teach coach sprinting because they don't know enough about biomechanics. Like they're intimidated by guys like Stu McMillan and stuff. And and what Michael said is the most powerful thing was the timing of sprints, the timing of short sprints. And what he said, even if you do nothing else, even if you know nothing about sprint, if you will just time 3 sprints every time a kid works out and write down the times, record, rank, and publish, they will organically self-organize and get faster. They will run a fast sprint and their brain will remember it. They'll run a slow one and the brain will say, "Oh, I remember. I want to
Mhm.
remember why that was slow. Oh, I tried to take long strides. That was slow." And so we can organically get better. It's really no different than shooting a basketball. If it goes in, you get reinforced. Like
Right.
you might know nothing about shooting a basketball, but if you shoot it enough, you might get pretty good at it. Now, it also helps if you have a coach telling you the fundamentals that have really worked for other guys, like assemble the plane in flight, but there's no substitute from actually doing it and feeling it, seeing the improvement and latching onto that improvement.
So that
I
goes.
think I was just saying I think these concepts that, if we're talking about feed the cats, I think these concepts can be applied to multiple aspects of skill development. Like you think about just shooting a basketball, it's like if you're just shooting 100 3-pointers and you're missing 60, 70% of the three pointers. It's like you're not necessarily enforcing a good pattern in that training.
Yes, and the key there is I'm an old basketball coach, and we used to have two different three-point shooting drills, and both of them were really good and different. But each time the guy would set, like two guys would each end up shooting 53 pointers over like an 8 minute period. So it was rapid fire, so they're moving around like you do in a basketball game. But here's the key: we weren't just shooting them. At the end of every 10, they'd they'd say, "Hey coach, I just made 7." We'd write down 7. And we would record, rank, and publish. And this is long before Feed the Cats. This is when I was still killing cats. I still understood the value of timing things that you want to be fast, recording things. We never shot free throws without writing down how many we made. So the intent is so important. And I think as soon as we start measuring things, we start trying to improve those measurements. And so
True.
everything we do, like you said, in the weight room, man, it's pretty powerful when you can bench press 50 pounds more than you could 3 months ago. That thing, fuels motivation.
So now that you went into a little bit of weightlifting, let's talk about that for speed because, as you know, there's million and one opinions about weights and speed. What's yours?
Well, it's very unsatisfying to people that whose lives are dedicated to the weight room, because I tell people there's nothing specific in the weight room that I can see a kid do that will punch his ticket to be on my 4x1. There's
Hmm.
nothing specific. Now, people will argue Olympic lifts, and I'm like, geez, half the people that are good at Olympic lifts are not fast. Like you can't really display a KPI for speed by doing anything in particular in the weight room. Now, maybe are Olympic lifts better than bicep curls? Sure, sure. That's so. So what I tell people is that we want to be general in the weight room, generally strong, and then we want to be extreme in our speed training. In other words, we
Hmm.
want to turn it up to an 11, extreme. And then in practice, we want to be specific. And coaches are so non-specific in so many practices. They're doing drills that are nothing more than activities that produce zero achievement. Never mistake activity for achievement. And so that's a real problem. So going back to the weight room, I'm not saying the weight room is not important. I do think it's supplemental. I think strong is good. I think the typical sprinter is strong before he ever starts lifting weights. It's really weird. The ability to express force quickly into the ground probably means that you're pretty naturally strong. So sprinters are strong, and you can improve your sprinting, especially if you're weak, by getting stronger. I think there's a point of diminishing returns. I consulted with Saquon Barkley a month before he signed with the Eagles, and I told him, "You're strong enough. You're strong enough, man. As a matter of fact, you are burning the stake with everything you do. You need to start backing off, and you need to start doing sprint training that you're probably not doing right now, or else you're going to be an old man at the age of 27." And he took my advice, and he was looked younger than he's ever looked to me last year. Younger, leaner, faster. Sprinting is a fountain of youth. So I'm not saying not to get strong, but I'm saying that we need to resist the idea that we can get specifically strong to make us fast. We were talking earlier about landmine stuff. Well, I think landmine stuff, a full body, rotational, powerful thing, really makes sense. Like there are things in the weight room makes a lot more sense than other things. But I just think we need to resist the idea that the weight room is the birthplace of speed. It's really not.
Have you looked at any of James Smith work? James Smith, Anyway, he has a quote that he says, and he says, "Nothing in the weight room will ever mimic the forces incurred in sprint work." And I thought that that was just well articulated. If you start looking at, you know, the ground reaction forces of a max velocity sprint versus the bar, how much you can load on the bar, in terms of the ratios to the to
Now
your
you're
body
talking
weight.
about the James Smith that's like brilliant.
Yeah,
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 like
yeah,
he
absolutely
like
brilliant.
lives like on a different planet than the three of us. You know, like yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I know of him, and
Applied sprint training, that guy.
yes,
Yeah.
and he's reached out to me a few years ago, and it kind of like it was a wow moment for me. And I think he's exactly right to express force as fast as you have to do it, where your ground contact time is a twelfth of a second. Um, takes extremely fast, strong forces going into the ground, but there's also a transition that occurs. There's force absorption, transition, force generation. So those things have to happen really, really fast. And I don't know how you really do that in the weight room. The the probably a much more important indicator of that improving ground contact times is much more plyometric based. You know, where you're landing and jumping. I say land and jump at the same time. All that means is there's a real fast transition between absorption and generation. And so that's really important. But then the other thing, and Corfus and I talk about this a lot, um, is that the frequency of contract relax has to be really fast. Uh,
Hmm.
if you can imagine, you know, you have a hamstring that contracts, and you've been doing a lot of Nordics, and you're doing a lot of, like you're really strong in the hamstring. Okay, you have a really good strong contraction, but that contraction can only last a nanosecond
Yeah.
because then it has to relax totally.
Right.
And if it doesn't relax, what happens? Uh, Terror.
So that, yeah, this leads me to some questions I have. Two questions about relaxation. Um, I'll go to the more technical question first that I'm very interested in, and that's how do you teach someone to relax at a maximum speed while still being able to put the force into the ground?
The answer to that question is such advanced common sense. You have to sprint.
Yeah.
You have to sprint.
Yeah.
And we sprint from day one. We don't have like a 6 week GPP. We don't do mesocycles where we're focusing. Nope. First day of sprinting, we sprint, and our first day of workouts, we sprint and we time. And people say, "How many hamstring pulls do you have?" And it's like none in 26 years. First day of sprinting, never. We just do it. You know, our basketball practice, when my dad coach, after just casually shooting around for a little bit, we went full speed, full court drill as our first drill. We didn't have no ramp into practice. We weren't like stretching or doing a couple laps. Nope. We hit the floor running. And I think that's the way cats are too. You know, like when a cat, sees prey, he just goes. You go, I need to warm up first. I'm a little bit tight here. Coach told me to stretch. Coach told me to get my heart rate up. Nope, just goes. And so we want to train people like cats. So what I tell people is I've had this happen. Let me tell you, we learn by stories. Over COVID, everything shut down, obviously. There was one gym that remained open in our town. And like 8 of my track guys who were also football players went to this gym and they lifted, I think, 6 hours a day. They got ripped. They posted pictures. When we finally came back, those 8 guys were all at least 1 mile an hour slower than they were the year before. At least. One of them got injured because they were too thick and strong. Um, Only one of the 8 guys ever made it back to his previous speed pre-COVID. And these guys are teenagers that are like a year older. They all should have been a 1 mile an hour faster. Instead, they're 1 mile an hour slower. So the lesson there is lifting without sprinting is dangerous and it'll make you slow. So
That's
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. That's kind of the part two of my question is, I mean, we could imagine that they're doing both, right? They're in a full swing of training. But do you think that the lifting has a negative effect on the relaxation qualities versus a full plyometric lifting type of system?
I I would say yes. Uh, but I do say this a lot, and this pisses people off. Uh, that that sprinting cures a lot of the evils of the weight room. You know,
Yeah.
like you said, like long, slow, strong contractions that builds strength. That's okay, good, good. And hey, VBT might be a faster contraction. Hey, that makes sense in my head. VBT sounds like a good idea. But man, if you start contrasting every heavy lift with a plyo,
Mm,
you know, it's pretty simple. You can call it French contrast and blah blah blah. Like act like you're trying to win a Nobel Prize for training, but it's really as simple as heavy lift plyo, and you sprint before you lift, not after. And you sprint 2 or 3 times a week. And this pisses off weight room people too. That lifting should never interfere with speed training. And people say,
Mhm.
what in the hell does that mean? They want to like fight me or something. And it's like okay, if you do like 8 sets of 5 heavy squats on Monday, and your times suck on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, that's interference. Well, when can we do that workout? And my answer is maybe never. But maybe on a Friday when you're going to take Saturday and Sunday off. But if you come back and time slow sprints on Monday, that needs to be your guide. That I say when you start timing shit, you start learning shit, and that's the shit you should learn. That we don't want to be slow. It's not like, and as you know, open up a whole can of worms here. But the whole peaking thing and periodization, where you're just going to bury kids for 6 weeks, and their performance is going to drop. They're going to actually perform poorly during that time because you're loading them, and then you take your foot off the gas, and they run faster later in the year, and you're like patting yourself on the back. I just don't accept that. I think that we're peaking all year long. That Feed the Cats is we peak all year long. We never want to have any practice that ruins the next day. Tired is the enemy, not the goal. And we don't say we don't care about how fast we run in March and April as long as we run fast in May. No, we just we want to run as fast as we can the whole year.
That's interesting because that seems so backwards to what every training program elicits. And I could look back to my college days in swimming where weeks 1 through 3 were hell week. Basically, you come in and you're just getting destroyed. You're getting absolutely destroyed. You don't start thinking about going fast until until January, really. We had our championship meets in March. So we did a little mini peak week in December, and then starting in January is when we start working on speed, and we come into school in August. So it's like all that time there, it's you're working on the slow, you're working on the killing the body, and then you're trying to learn speed 3 months before championships.
Swimming, of course, is the biggest volume um, um, sport. They even sprinters. It's basically like taking a sprinter and track and run them miles. And that's what they do in swimming. But that's periodization as well, where we don't give a rat's ass about performance until we want them to peak. And
Mhm.
what happens is kids get hurt. About 85 to 90% of an athlete's entire athletic experience is practice. And if practice is the hell you have to go through to compete, you are leaving a lot on the table because we're not as good at things that we hate. We are not, we get hurt when we're miserable, but it's not just swimming. Zach Dakin talks about TCU baseball, where with GPS, they have found that in the first week, each practice is like 2 or 3 times the volume of a game. And kids
Right.
get hurt. Kids get hurt. High volume is the number one culprit in injury. A tired body cannot protect itself, and so you get hurt. You look at how football has always been done. I think there's a lot of coaches that would still do two-a-days. They're illegal in high school now, at least in Illinois, and they didn't care about performance for 2 weeks. They just wanted to get you tough and just grind you. And if 8 kids got hurt and couldn't play in the first game, it's because they were soft. They didn't do enough in the summer. They didn't have the genetics that it took to fight through, and become a football guy. They couldn't pass the rite of passage. I think that every sport kind of wants to do this. And so when somebody like me comes in saying, no, we want to come into the season fast, explosive, bouncy. I really don't care about your endurance. We're going to build endurance by just stacking those traits and patiently practicing. And we're going to be hell on wheels and healthy in the game 1 and in game 10 and in game 20. I mean, that is kind of revolutionary.
Have you noticed
So
a
I gotta. Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna
my
say, have
bad.
you noticed a sport where these athletes come back to you faster, or a sport that you would rather them play? Because a lot of these guys are multi-sport athletes. Is there a sport you would prefer, or where you have noticed that they actually come back and have improvements in their times?
Very few. Now, sprint-based football teams, which there are hundreds now, that don't do conditioning. They don't bring their kids in at 7 in the morning on Saturday and run them. They do not have long, crushing weight room sessions in season. They practice 90 minutes a day. Yes, they are measurably faster at the end of the season. But old school football was the spiral of doom. They just got slower. They can still win games if they had good players, and I say that dumb is undefeated against dumber, so they still got to win some games and everything. Um, I would say that the only sports that were, and there's still a lot of bad, but the only sports that kind of started to get it was volleyball. That some coaches are like, I don't see why we need to run laps.
Yeah.
We
Hmm.
don't need to train like cross country runners. As a matter of fact, the more we run, it doesn't seem like we jump as high. So volleyball is a little bit more performance based, and I think basketball, uh,
Yeah.
that that even then you see these S&C guys I totally respect acting like their favorite preseason workout is the time mile. And I'm like, I just totally, I mean, I can name names, guys I love, guys that I agree with 90% of the time are so aerobic based, that's how we develop the big aerobic engines, and blah, blah, blah. But you know what else develops it? Playing basketball. Playing basketball will develop the aerobic engine, and what you do outside of basketball should be sprint, lift, jump, bounce.
So a big thing that I think about often, because to be good at being fast, you have to be relaxed, right? And so if you could be good at being fast, it doesn't take that much energy. Doesn't take that much energy. You're not tensing up. So building up that aerobic engine is essentially getting yourself really good at being fast so that when you are going fast, you're not using that energy in the game. You're doing what you're naturally good at.
I think that what you're referring to is what I call efficiency. That
Okay, yeah.
that the faster you can run, we call it speed reserve. If I can get you, let's say you're a 19-mile-an-hour guy, and let's say game speeds in football are 14 to 18 miles an hour. Those game speeds are going to wear you out if you're not very fast because you're so close to your ceiling. You're having to work so hard to play at that speed. Well, if I could get you to 23 miles an hour, now that would take about 4 years of great training. All of a sudden, those game speeds seem easy. And as your words, more relaxed. I don't know if you've ever seen, it's such a paradox that if you go watch a fantastic guy in the 400, a very hard race, it's hard for everybody. The last 100, I don't care if you run 1,000 miles a week, the last part of the 400 meters is really going to hurt. But it looks like the guy who's not trying always wins the race. It is because they're so efficient, so relaxed, and they've learned how to run fast, but make it look easy. And that's
Mhm.
really what we want to do. Whereas the guy in last place, the veins are popping out of his neck and you can see the muscles and he's just grinding, grinding, but he was in last place. So if the guy that tried the hardest won, it would be totally flipped. But really what we're wanting to do is to perform highly at a high level and make it look easy. Fantastic pitcher one time. Um, he's like 24 and threw a one hitter and said, somebody said, man, you made it look so easy. He goes, it took about 10 years of hard work to make it look that easy, and that's the way all good athletes need to be. And I think coaching the relaxed, the two biggest problems in performance is trying too hard and thinking too much. If you can get athletes to let it rip and stay relaxed, they're going to be better.
100%. That sounds a lot like the book that I just finished reading, The Inner Game of Tennis.
It's
You
a
ever
great
heard of
book,
that
isn't
one?
it? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I got, you remember earlier I talked about demonstration being the key. I really got that from that book. In that book,
Mm,
they talked about taking a guy out and watching a guy that had a great stroke and just watch this guy, and then have him
right.
go out. Now you do it. And he was like 10% better, not by what he was told to do, but just by watching it demo. But that book is a great book. But that was my one big takeaway from that.
I'm noticing
100%.
you're a very well-read coach. Can you give us some books that maybe changed the trajectory of your coaching, or just some of your favorites, you know?
Yeah, well, 90 some percent of the books I read are non-coaching books. But if I read The Splendid and the Vile by Eric Larson about Churchill, there are things I learned
Yeah.
from Churchill about coaching, and uh, so I think that all books I read, my favorite books, are fiction, like Pillars of the Earth, I've read twice. Stephen King's The Stand and 11/22/63, two of my, they aren't coaching books, but in terms of books that I recommend to people, Atomic Habits by James Clear is an absolute must. It needs to be like a semester course in high school. We are nothing more than our habits. Maybe we should learn techniques to break bad habits and create good ones. And just a spoiler, you want to create small habits. If you tell a
Mhm.
kid to do 100 push-ups a day, he'll do it for one day.
Yeah.
If you tell him to do 10 a day, at the end of the year, he may be doing 100. So you start small. Atoms are small but powerful. So chop wood, carry water, great wisdom. Twin Thieves by Steve Jones, a good friend of mine. I actually got to read his manuscript before it got published. Great book on leadership. The Groundedness by Brad Stolberg. I'm not a real religious guy, but it felt like a way to live and a way to be a good human, and I think it really relates to the way we coach athletes. So those are just some of my favorites to recommend to people.
I love it. That's phenomenal. I wrote down all of them.
Yeah,
What
same
about
here. I
coaching?
started putting all these.
Maybe one or two of coaching that you've read as well.
Ah, geez. I don't think I've actually read any by an actual coach, except for, and this is powerful, in the 80s when I was a head basketball coach. At one time, I was the youngest head basketball coach in Illinois. Uh, um, so So I was a basketball coach throughout the 80s all the way to 91. And I visited practices. I went to Bobby Knight's. It was only 3 hours for me.
Which, by the way, I think that in reality, that's the best way compared to a book. You go see the guy in person, you go get it right up close.
It is, if you want to get good at something, number one, go watch good people work. It'll
Right.
Mhm.
blow your mind. I've spent
Exactly.
100 hours in Chris Corfus' basement, and I'll just sit there,
Yeah, exactly.
and he doesn't talk to me, and then I'll say, how come you're doing this? And it takes 3 follow-up questions before I get what I want. That's how we learn. We
Yeah.
learn by watching good people do things. Number two, um, call up somebody that's good, and ask them if you can buy them breakfast. Uh, you got to eat, right? And I've never turned down breakfast, so that's a great thing. Number three, start a podcast, and then email somebody that you don't know and say, can we do a podcast? And 99 times out of 100, they say yes. So all those things are really, really good. So, visiting and watching Bobby Knight work really, really helped me. But then reading wise, I could not read, and I read Rick Pitino's book, I read Bob Knight's book, I read Gene Katie's book, I read every book about Jim Valvano's book, Dean Smith's book. I mean, every single basketball coach's book I read. And and I think coaching is coaching, and teaching is coaching, and coaching is teaching. So I think there's I could read the inner book of tennis, and I don't do tennis, but you know what? I can learn things from a tennis coach. So I think all those things, and I love the thing too. I quote it a lot. Read things no one else is reading.
Yeah.
Mm.
Isn't that a cool thing?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to read just the pop crap, I want to pick up a book that I don't think anybody else is reading this today.
Yeah, 100%. I think Andrew and I are both big on that because everybody likes to read the Verkhoshanskys and the Louis Simmons and whatnot, but not everybody's reading the Tom Myers or the Bill Parisis and the all these other individuals that are on the, fascia things like that. And it doesn't even have to be about fascia, but just exactly what you said. Read the things no one else is reading and just try to learn something new. I think that is invaluable advice.
Yeah, and eventually read the book Feed the Cats. Um,
Oh yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
I'm
eventually,
excited. I'm excited for that one.
eventually, the guy sent me half of my advance last summer, and I thought it was kind of done. I didn't like the edits, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just a diva, where I didn't want a single word changed and that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna rework it, and hopefully it'll be out in 2026.
Oh man,
Hey, that's gonna be
I'll be
awesome.
the first
That's
one.
gonna be awesome.
I hope so. I hope I get it done.
Yeah.
Hey, you definitely will, and now that'd be a hell of a book to read. I mean, one thing that Brett and I both talk about often is the beauty of being yourself and not trying to conform to what everybody else is saying based on science. Because I mean, look, science is constantly changing, but what you're feeling on a day to day, what you're feeling when you're doing the action, that is up to you. That's up to the individual. So I believe that too often we look to a study rather than the actual feeling of what life is and being present in it. And that's a beautiful thing that you talk about often, that Weck talks about, that Brian talks about, Kula talks about. Every single person, even the primal movement guys, they were saying, did it feel right? That was the big question they were asking, is like people were asking, were they doing it right? It's like, did it feel right? And it's just like you can't buy knowledge from a study more than from yourself. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think the thing about if you don't look back at your former self and just cringe, I'm like literally like
Mhm.
you're like freaking embarrassed. about the stupid stuff you believed and did and all those things, then that means you had it all figured out when you were 20 and then spent the rest of your life defending your bullshit beliefs, and I think that it's so much more fun to say, hey, I'm 66, and it's scary to think how I'm going to evolve in the next 5 years. What am I going to learn in the next 5 years that really changed my mind? Um, and so it I think it takes courage to be yourself and to go out on a limb and be creative. Um, I talked about the twin thieves. The twin thieves are the fear of judgment and the fear of failure. And and that's why, people like me that don't have much to lose because I'm just like a high school track coach and chemistry teacher. I don't have much to lose, so I can be creative. I can try things and fail and say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then I can try things and say, holy cow, I think this is pretty big stuff. And and when you have that, you're going to get further. Now, if I was getting paid 500,000 a year to be the track coach at University of Florida, maybe I couldn't be, like shooting from the hip creative because, maybe they wouldn't put up with my failures.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's another thing too. It's where like what ends up like being right and wrong is purely just experiment. It's purely experiment.
Yeah, I pissed people off the other day. I said, training is experimental. And, somebody
Mhm.
said, well, what does that mean? You were a bunch of guinea pigs? Like that doesn't seem like you're very confident in what you do. And then I kind of remembered that I should have included the fact that good coaches are 100% sure of what doesn't work,
Mhm.
maybe 75% sure of what does work. And
Yeah.
so, and so a part of experience and wrecking your car a few times, you get this real sense of what not to do. And I think that's important, but that still leaves that door open. And that's why people say that coaches are like 10 years ahead of the scientists in sports science because we start to learn things, and then
Yeah.
sports science people, it takes them 10 years to say, well, let's test that
Yeah. I mean, you have testing every day going on.
every day. And we're measuring too, right?
Right. Exactly.
I used to tell my chemistry kids, "Hey, science is pretty cool. We think stuff, we try stuff, we measure it, write it down, and then we share our results, and then we try more stuff, and and that's exciting. It's not just the memorizing of like the glossary words, the words in dark print. That's not science. What the science is trying stuff and writing it down and experimenting, and so coaches do that. And because a Feed the Cats program is really based on record, rank, publish, is that we're always trying to measure the things that matter.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys have heard of the output sports sensors. They're so cool. You need to look into them. They're 500 bucks and you don't need many of them, but you can Velcro them to your shoe, and you can get ground contact times.
Oh,
You can
wow.
you can
Mhm.
Velcro it to the bar, and you get VBT.
Ooh.
You can you can
Ooh.
you can put it on your waist and do a triple broad jump, and you get momentum and power. You can put them on your wrist, and you throw a med ball up, and you know the exit velocity of the med ball. Uh,
Wow.
it's all it is. It all just a sensor and a phone. That's all it is, man. It's a guy in Ireland does it. I know Les Bellman's really big. I think that you could survive with one or two. I'm like literally like buying one $500 sensor. You could really start measuring some things that matter, and it's so cool. The We had somebody do prime times at a clinic, and it was a good guy. We always try to pick somebody good to demo, and he looked good. He looked really good, fast, explosive, and so we measured it, and his ground contact times was like fast, not as fast, not as fast, not as fast. I said, try to keep your ground contact times, really fast. We don't, you're spending too much time on the ground. And the next time he did it, it was fast, 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 fast. And we could show him it was.
Yeah.
And and everybody in the crowd was like, "Oh my God, the change that created." We measured something that mattered, and yeah, it like motivates you.
Now
You
I
know what's
know.
really interesting? Sorry, Brett, but like one thing that's very interesting is you spoke on this a little bit before, but the power of the measurement. Because a lot of times we think we're going fast, a lot of times we think we're throwing hard, but when you see the actual measurement, you're like, oh, I wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. And the motivational quality. I don't know if you have little kids that have messy rooms, but if you want your kid to really impress you, don't just tell them to clean their room. Say, clean your room and I'll time you.
Oh,
Mm.
oh.
They'll become a Tasmanian devil. They'll I'm telling you, we all love the gamified performance thing. If you want to improve something, measure it or video it or compete.
Mm. That's the
Yeah.
truth. I'm a huge proponent of filming everything, especially when it comes to workouts.
Yep.
When it comes to workouts, when it comes to sports performance, every single one of my races I had filmed. Every single one
And,
of them, every
Andrew,
single workout.
this is a true confession, but sometimes I fake video. I will
Oh.
pick up my phone and
Uh,
and my guys think that they're going to be on Twitter and they jump higher, run faster. Just saying, I'm giving you all my secrets.
Coach,
Hey,
you
I
got the
love
video? I
that.
want to see it.
I love that. That's hilarious.
Fake video, man.
That's great. It's the truth though too, because I do that. I do that as well. I maybe don't purposely like fake the video, but I will even if you are really videoing, it's the same thing. You see
Same
something
thing.
change, yeah. And start trying to bring out the phone, maybe don't get it in time, but they still perform
Yeah,
a
and
different way.
I always try to impress people by dropping names, but a guy named Heisenberg said that when we observe the atom changes.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah.
we're not really observing the atom in nature, we're observing the observed atom. And like so I always try to bring that in. Same thing with athletes. When we closely observe them, when we video them, we change the athlete. Or if a teacher has an evaluation, the principal comes in and watches them teach, they ain't the same teacher they always are. They're different because they're
100.
being observed.
Yeah, one thing I stress a lot to athletes I work with some fighters and some other individuals, but just recording yourself because if you just record like you're hitting the bag for 3 rounds and you have all 3 rounds on video, to go back and watch that, just like you said, watching the professional, you improve, but watching yourself, because now consciously you're thinking, okay, this hand was dropping, or all right, just little technical details. And otherwise, you may think that you're just the man over there ripping into the into the bag or whatever the sport case may be.
Which brings up one other coaching technique that my oldest son, Alec, says that when you record a kid, video a kid, show it to him without talking. It's brilliant
Oh,
because when you start criticizing, the kid pushes back. If you just show the video, the kid will be his biggest critic. And that's really what you want. You want that kid to learn how to build his own house. Now, then the kid will ask you, how do I correct this? And you say, well, this is what you need to do. And it just works so much better.
That is great advice. That is great advice.
I
Okay.
really like that. I really like that because like you're forcing the kid to let go of their ego and ask the question because you're not trying to be the authority, you're just allowing them to think you're the authority. I like that.
It's totally upside down from the way we were brought up.
100%.
100%.
That's really good stuff. One thing I want to ask you too is just bringing it back to track a little bit because you're a track guy, and I want to ask because you've said it before about the cat doesn't need to stretch and whatnot. but I'm very interested about the warm-up process. Maybe not necessarily about what you're doing specifically. Maybe it could be what not to do. But just go into the warm-up a little bit. I'd be very curious to hear from you.
Well, Zach Dakin at TCU and we're kind of like-minded on this stuff. And he had the statement, the workout is the warm-up, and the
Yeah.
warm-up is the workout. It's kind of a cute little thing, but it kind of describes the way we do things. Um, we hit the ground running. Now, we are not sprinting and being time first. We basically, if you look up my atomic speed workout, which has really gone viral, it's a 15-minute workout where you do 60 seconds of work, and it's just such a great hook, that teams all over America are doing that instead of their 40-minute fatigue-seeking warm up now. But if you start off by doing a fast march and A skips and high knees, nobody gets hurt doing those things. And then we do three plyometrics, and then we do three straight-legged things, and then we do an acceleration to a full sprint. And somebody said, "Oh, so that's your warm up before you actually sprint?" And the answer is yes, but I don't like to call it a warm up because if I
Mhm.
do, I don't think our guys are doing each thing on a at an 11 on a
Right.
scale of 10. We're trying to do things with such high intention where it's only for 5 seconds. When I tell my track team that every team in America is going to work harder than us, they're kind of worried at first. And then somebody will say, "Hey guys, this is why we have to go hard. We have to bring it every day."
Right.
There you go. There you go. So, if you ask about what my guys do before a race at a track meet, they're on their own, but I will see them doing the drills we do. They may be doing some things they've seen on YouTube or something, whatever. But it's only like
Yeah.
5 seconds. They're not running a lap. And then I do have a saying that I say you must sprint before you sprint.
Hmm.
If you don't, then your first race will be part of your warm up, and you don't want that. So
Yeah,
what we
100.
so what we do is we spike up and do 4x1 exchanges, or if they're not in the 4x1, they will get over and basically run like they're getting timed in a 10-yard fly or something. But they have to get the CNS firing on all cylinders. So it's just another cute saying, sprint before you sprint.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, a big thing too is like if you're doing the slow warm-ups and all that, you're training the brain to go slow. It's not rocket science at that point. Like
For
you want to
sure.
go fast, you go fast, you know?
Hey guys, I got about 5 minutes. I have a
We do
4-hour
too, yeah.
drive to do a presentation this evening in Southern
Okay.
Illinois. So,
Last
so, so if there's any critical questions or fun questions you want to ask in the last few minutes, let's shoot them.
I think a good one that I've been wanting to get out is for you, what makes you look up, I hear you talk about Les Spellman, and obviously these different individuals are bringing different things to the table. But what is it that you look for in a coach, and what makes you want to learn from somebody?
I think, first of all, authenticity. Um,
Mm.
the thing that bothers me, and I'm openly critical, and I name names of coaches that are in a pissing contest to maintain their expert status. Um, I've never been that way. Chris Corfus is not that way. Kula is not that way. McGinty's not that. Um, I think there's a lack of authenticity that happens when you're trying too hard to use big words or complicated slides in your presentation. You're trying to show academia instead of the nuts and bolts stuff that people can understand and they can take home and they can be effective. So all that stuff is really important. But there's also with Les Bellman, for example, not only is he authentic, but he just radiates this aura of being a good person. People just like Les, and um,
Mhm.
and I think I find that and Brian Kula and JT Ayers and and Corfus and really the whole network. We just don't invite people back to speak at Track Football Consortium if they don't have that authentic, genuine, kind-hearted, give. I mean, the people that I love are people that give away constantly. And it's weird, but I truly believe what you give away comes back. That's not why you should give it away, but I think that's important to note that sometimes you give away a lot, but you're getting it back.
Yeah, I mean, I heard Alex Hormozy, who I'm sure you've probably heard of, the entrepreneur coach, says give away the knowledge and sell the application. I think that that's a pretty good idea.
Love
Coach,
that.
we really appreciate you coming on. This has been fantastic, and man, I'm very grateful to have you on our podcast. And Andrew, you want to say anything? Definitely want to give you a chance to coach to tell the people where they can find you and all that. But yeah, let's just give some closing thoughts
Yeah, I
and wrap
mean,
it up. Very grateful.
I'm gonna second what Brett said. We're super grateful to have you on. I mean, this was a hell of a conversation. Just being able to chop it up and learn a little bit from you. I mean, it's a blessing. It's a true blessing, and we we hope to have more conversations in the future. Um, and definitely, if there's anything you'd like to plug into the podcast, all for you. Like, show us your Instagram and all that stuff. And where can the people find you?
I think most of my stuff, well, I run my own Twitter, at PNTrack, and then my son is like a content guy. My son Troy, and so he runs Insta, TikTok. And I'm on Facebook now. I don't even have passwords. I don't even have the apps on my phone for these things. But yet he'll take my stuff that he sees or videos that I send. I have a lot of YouTube stuff, so all that stuff's good. You know, we are promoting right now that 8 week master course, they call it, on Feed the Cats that you can get for $99 before August 13th. And then after that, it's 149. But you'll get like 10 hours of content pretty cheap. And I'm looking forward to that. And that's through USR, Universal Speed Rating. That's Les Spellman's company. And Les and I have been partnered for close to 3 years now. And it's really a good match because, yeah, we're just really after the same stuff. And so, yeah, I've had a great time. I've obviously had a great time. I've been very animated talking and all that kind of stuff. So you guys know I've had fun. And we didn't talk for 8 hours like you guys did with WEC, but I'm afraid we probably could have. So,
Yeah.
so maybe we do another one someday.
Absolutely, Coach.
Yeah,
Once again,
100%.
thank you for coming on. It means a lot, and we appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you on the next one. Peace out.